So the way that we chose to end our piece was with some who, what, when, where, why questions. So we do want to sort of start with those, if those are things that you guys have discussion points you want to make. But this is sort of an open discussion, so if anyone wants to ask any question for us or for each other.
Statement.
Yeah, speak now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say forever hold your peace because you can always speak later.
Alright, hi guys. My name's Casey, I'm a senior. I just want to say congratulations, that was a fantastic performance. I thought that it was really well done and well articulated, and I really enjoyed the fact that you placed the performance itself outside of the two teams' offices, as that's a very physical representation of the division, and I thought that was really smart. So I guess my question for you guys is, how was the process for you guys? What did that entail? And furthermore, moving forward, what are some of the strategies that you think this institution can use that could help?
Yeah, okay, well thank you so much for all of the praise. The first assignment that we had for this project after we did research on our topic was to write monologues. So we each wrote one, and we kind of incorporated those into the bigger piece. So each one of the things that we spoke was something that we wrote. And then after that, we kind of amended the monologues, changed them up a little bit so that they flowed a little bit more nicely, and added bridging lines and bridging motion, action sort of things, and rehearsed it a bunch of times. And then came out with something.
The very initial process was H had us propose ideas for a social justice issue, either on campus or in the Geneva community that we want to address. Two people, that would be me and Kathleen actually, decided that we wanted to talk about the coordinate system, and the class voted. The other theater performance was last week. This was ours, we chose the coordinate system, and then we assigned different parts of the coordinate system to research. We did that research, and that's where the monologues came from, for the overall process.
Yeah. So one of my prompts was Elizabeth Blackwell, and so that was more heavily focused in my particular monologue, because that's what I did research on.
Yeah, I'm curious about Campus Pride. I mean, it came up over and over again, and whether any of you were tempted to maybe get on the phone with them or send them an email and find out how they conducted their research.
So yeah, we did not do that. That actually would have been really interesting. I know for me, when I was applying to this institution, Campus Pride, every year, like they say in the dialogue, makes an annual list of the top friendly institutions. I would imagine it's because we have resources and we have an LGBT studies program. And I know that looking at the other colleges that have been on that list before, that those things are in consideration. But that line specifically was very important to me, because that's one of the reasons that I actually decided to come to HWS, was that particular bit. So including that in my monologue, which is very personal, was a choice that I thought exemplified this weird divide for queer students on this campus, that there's this organization that rated us as so friendly, and then the real lived experiences are not.
Yeah. I know that the LGBT studies program here at HWS is one of, if not the oldest.
It is the first that was ever established a separate program
Yeah.
at an institution in the United States.
Yeah, and that article for Kels and I think was, that was a really good bonding moment for us. I'm gonna turn so I can look at you. It was a really good bonding moment for us throughout this process, because I forget that time is a thing, and so it didn't register to me that Kels was not a student yet when that had happened, and I was a student here when that article was released. And that article was really hard for me to read because I was not out at the time. And so for that article to be placed and for me to be like, then why can't I do this? Why can't I, if this is the best it's gonna get, if this is truly one of the best places to be as a queer person, what the fuck am I gonna do for the rest of my life? And it just, so sort of talking about the experience of him choosing this school because of that, and being here when it was released was a really interesting part of our process.
Hi, I'm Jackie, I'm a sophomore, and I was wondering if you guys have any proposed starts or solutions, or beginnings to solutions to this problem, not just the coordinate system, but the exclusionary communities that we have on campus through gender in so many ways.
Yeah,
So-
so, do you wanna go?
I'll start. So as a clear, our goal for this performance, I think that's good to make clear for all of you, is that we aim to open more campus-wide discussions, so starting with this one. And then in the future, because like we mentioned in our dialogue, there's coordinate conversations, but administration isn't there, a lot of students don't show up. It's supposed to be about the coordinate system in some way, and it always ends up being about that and not commencement seating. And yet, we're not having these bigger dialogues that would be needed to figure out the change. I know that there are little things throughout the system. I'll be honest and say that I think that part of the exclusionary nature on this campus, whether it be for gender or anything else, has roots and the idea that our inherent system is a divide. Like the way we structure ourselves at the initial point is division. As for the rest of the group, I don't know whether anyone else has solutions to this. I think our overall goal though was to have these conversations with multiple people, so any solutions that came up with were not in an isolated bubble of the group of the 6 of us.
So, going off of what Kel said, I don't know how many of you know Alex Karai, but I have been talking to him about this, and he told me that the school is actually chartered based on the names Hobart and William Smith, and so like in order to change the coordinate system or how it functions with the college, you would have to remove the charter and then recharter the school as Hobart and William Smith. So in that sense, he said that it takes a long time because you would have to apparently you'd have to unhire and then rehire all the professors so that they're not employees of the coordinate system and then put them back into Hobart and William Smith. It was really complicated. If you need more information, he knows the whole thing, but
So to go off of that, I have a question for the faculty and staff in the room. Are you employees of Hobart and William Smith, or are you employees of a coordinate? How does that work? Why would they have to fire all of you to make that? That seems like that's not true to me.
Yeah, that's actually, I've heard from administrators both of those stories, but I've also heard that that's misinformation. So I think one of the problems we have in this discussion is it's unclear what the facts are. So, and that's from high-ranking administrators. I've had that this charter issue is a non-issue.
really.
Yeah, our paychecks don't come from one college or
Right.
another. So
Yeah.
I do not know the current status, and having been told both from very high-level people, I'm not comfortable saying I know what the truth is, but I think one person told me that it's in no way true.
Okay.
I don't know.
Our official name of the colleges was Hobart and William Smith Colleges. It was Colleges of the Seneca until about 5 years ago. That was our official name. So when we were actually hired, I know my first paycheck said I got this check from Colleges of the Seneca, and I said, where the heck is that? But it is now, the official name is Hobart and William Smith Colleges.
Okay. So I guess I didn't miss information. Interesting.
Have you checked how other people do it? I mean, how the other schools that were coordinates separated?
So that was my part of our research. I researched different colleges and their between their coordinate systems and why they chose to come together. Mostly they decided to come together is because it was better cost-wise. It was easier to have a college where both men and female can come together instead of going to 2 separate ones while still being on the same campus.
Also, I think it's important to acknowledge in that example is that Hobart and William Smith is very unique in the sense that we simultaneously, we're 2 separate colleges and one. So those institutions that Emily searched had 2 separate campuses, 2 separate faculty, things like that. There wasn't the, we all go to class together. We all have the same experiences, excluding certain traditions and excluding the name that we graduate with. And I think that's something we highlighted a bit in our performance, that there's this weird divide where we're all together, we're all sitting in this room, we all came to this performance, we all go to this campus, but at the same time, there's this narrative that we're 2 separate colleges, and there's this divide in the way that we're supposed to look at each other despite working together throughout everything else.
Yeah, the other thing is, in a lot of the colleges where they did combine, for example, the one that Em mentioned in her monologue, Hamilton and Kirkland, they are now, Kirkland is non-existent, it's just Hamilton College, and there's a little like pathway that says like Kirkland on it, so you know it was still there. And there were a couple buildings that were chartered under Kirkland and like are now part of the Hamilton campus, but it's now like, oh, like they used to belong to Kirkland, but now it's just all Hamilton. And I think that's how it is at Harvard and Radcliffe too. There's like a building that was Radcliffe College.
Yeah, there's Radcliffe campus, and
yeah.
it's like a library.
Yeah. So in the past, it's been handled probably a lot differently than most of us would like to see it handled here, if it were to go down that path.
Y'all, I mentioned the scissors statue. Could you talk a little bit more about your research on that and the history behind that?
I'm doing, I was gonna say that. What?
Do you know it, or do you want?
Oh, no, I know it. So last semester I was in an Intro to Media and Society class, and we had to choose one of like these statues on campus and research it. I didn't research the scissor statue, but I talked to a professor at the arts campus who was the professor of the person who did create that scissor statue. And apparently the scissor statue is supposed to represent the divide between Hobart and William Smith colleges. I know there's like a saying around campus where it's like, oh, the scissors are supposed to unite us, but in reality it's actually supposed to divide us. So it's a false statement.
Yeah, especially considering the fact that the image of scissors as like coming together makes no sense. It was like, because Pulteney Street originally divided the campus, so the other side was Williamson campus and where the quad is was Hobart campus. So putting the scissors in that location, in addition to the fact that they're literally scissors, was a gift to basically be like, we want to recut the divide between Hobart and William Smith.
And so I work reunion at school, so I meet a lot of alums and I hear a lot of their stories, and most of them are fantastic, but some of them are very linked in very problematic histories of this place. And that was a very known thing. I met alums that were here when those statues were being designed and erected, and the scissor statue was on William Smith's campus for a reason, and the scissor statue was gifted to William Smith for a reason, and it was known on campus that what the true meaning behind them was, but it was advertised in this way that it was like, we cut the divide, but it was like, we want to cut down Pulteney Street again, is what it really was. So when we were conducting research on them, all of the research that we found was like, Hobart College donated this statue to William Smith to represent like their coming together, but it's a very known thing amongst alums who were here that that's not what it was.
Yeah, that's what it says on the website, that it was donated as a gift from Hobart to William Smith to like acknowledge their joining together, which doesn't make any sense.
Also, because I'm making this up, but wasn't like the needle invented here or something?
No, I'm pretty sure it was super glue. Someone told me
Super glue. So like we should have had a super glue statue. That
Yeah.
would be so much better in every aspect.
Yeah.
Missed
Yeah, super
opportunities.
glue. Yeah, one of my friends told me that it was invented in Geneva, and he was like, I don't understand why they don't have a super glue statue instead of scissors. It would make so much more sense. Any other questions?
Comments? Concerns?
I had a comment about a part that was painful for me to hear. So it was in your monologue, in the part about how, and I'm totally not gonna get the words right, so correct me. But that we have like a biological drive to reproduce, and being queer isn't natural, and it just like, it sounded to me like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of really evil heterosexist narratives that have a meaningful life you have to have children, but like those are bad and evil. And queer sex is totally natural. They're like stump-tailed macaques. The female stump-tailed macaques only have orgasms with other female stump-tailed macaques. There's like, same-sex sex all over the place in nature. So it sounded like from your narrative that you were buying into like a whole, or that your character, whatever, was putting forth this like, to me, really painful vision of what's natural and normal and meaningful that is bad, heterosexist, past, bad science, totally debunked. So it was painful for me to hear. I don't know if that's useful or criticism or what, but I thought it would reflect that.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I mean, like, I think going off of that, it's something that you deal with on this campus. I think that that's a huge culture on this campus, and that exists within the fact that Hobart College is, I mean, like, Hobart men are like very hyper masculine, and like that is something that I think that is a huge struggle amongst student and this like hookup culture and rape culture that's on this campus is all embedded in the fact that we have these heteronormative cultures on campus. And I think that, I mean, like what I took out of that, because I also found it to be super painful, but in the sense that it was like, these are the cultures that are making it difficult and that hinder our students from feeling comfortable. And like, you know, like I can't speak to Kathleen's experience, but like that was something that I was actually like, I'm happy was brought up within the coordinate system, because I think that it's a huge issue with hypermasculinity and toxicity on this campus.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have this in my monologue, but on the first day when everything else was happening to me, I was walking with my parents to go get lunch, and I literally passed like a group of like Hobart men who were like calling each other the F word. And like from the get-go, like everything about this, like my first like, I came here a day early for the FGI pre-orientation. I didn't include that, like that was a fine time. But it was good. The start of my like official time here, orientation-wise, just the first day of orientation was the most alienating experience, because like the Hobart tenant happened, and then I heard people throwing around the F word, and then the other things happened to me the rest of the weekend, and I was like, wow. And like as someone who came to this campus very much like knowing my identity, knowing that I'm trans, and knowing that I'm queer, and being 100% like fine with it, and having no problem being loud about it on campus, it was it was really like disheartening and discomforting, and made me feel so unwelcome immediately, that this is like this toxic masculinity culture that I couldn't find a place in, that I still feel like I can't find a place in.
Yeah, I also kind of think that there is like a hyperfemininity also ascribed to William Smith culture, which was something that I really noticed when I got here, because like I grew up with a brother and a bunch of older cousins who were all guys, and so like I was always like, I mean, not to stereotype this further, but they were raised in, you know, a heteronormative, like hyper-masculine society, and so they were used to doing all these like things like playing outside and like doing all that, and so I always did that with them, and I like was never very, I mean, I don't want to say I wasn't a very feminine girl, but I kind of wasn't, and so that was something that I really noticed when I got here too.
I have a like a comment and question. I liked how you included and kind of attacked the idea of like how our colleges like uses underrepresented communities as tokens in our profile, and I was just wondering if you like discussed how we can work to change that in like our current status on campus, you know.
I think that we have a culture on campus of inclusion in like a like poster type of way. Like we love our students and we love our queer students especially, and every part of them. And then there is not a lot of that actually happening. That when people are actually coming out, they come out to their closest friends, but and there are queer accepting communities on campus, like certain sections where it's okay, like especially in William Smith athletics, I know that we are trying to make it a more accepting place, and they're accepting professors and accepting departments, and then there are other places where it's not safe to be queer and it's not safe to be out. And I think that that needs to be part of the discussion as well.
Yeah, I mean, even like going off of the places where it is safe, and I'm not saying this to offend anyone in the room, the LGBTQ plus resource center is like the worst. It's the most poorly designed space that could possibly have been constructed for queer students. It is literally made of glass. And it is in the middle of a dorm room that is dominated by majority white men. Most of the time athletes live there. It's like a thing that male athletes will like decide, we're all gonna live in De Cordova too, and we're all gonna do this. And I was on the Pride board last year when they were like kind of going over how to do that, and we gave them so many suggestions of how to construct that space, because queer students don't, like, when I was a first year, I didn't even feel comfortable going to Pride meetings in the IC. No one who goes to the IC isn't facing some sort of oppression on this campus. Like, people don't go to the IC unless they need help, really. And it's just like, because that's really what that space is there for, all of these group meetings. And like, I couldn't even go to that space where I've never seen a straight white man. And then to have this whole semester where you think that they're doing something and you think that there's going to be this safe, like, space that's going to be safe for you to go, and like, then to walk in and to see the whole thing be glass and be visible from so many different points on campus, like, I haven't stepped foot in there since the opening. And I know so many students on this campus that are still deeply in the closet that don't even have access to Pride anymore because they won't go, because they don't want to be seen by someone who's doing their laundry. When you want to do your laundry, you have to walk past it. Like, you literally can't be in there without knowing that someone's gonna walk by. And it just like...
And like adding to that too, the space is all windows. It did not get blinds for like the first 2 months of last semester, because I was in Pride for a while and I stopped going because I didn't feel comfortable or included in a lot of ways, which speaks to the campus culture as a whole, but there wasn't blinds for like 2 months. It's like to the point now that the Pride Alliance, if you all didn't know, has moved their meetings back to the IC, because literally there have been people who came for one meeting and felt so uncomfortable that they left. They never came back, and they won't come back, because it's not a welcoming space in the way it should be. And I think the point about the IC being a place for marginalized identities adds to this whole culture of like tokenization, because there's one place on campus that everyone who's marginalized in some way goes to, and that's the safe space on campus, and that's it.
And that safe space isn't even like a building like any other building on campus. It looks like a house.
Yeah.
It's like
a house.
And it's falling apart.
It's dark and it's dingy, and there's a kitchen. That's nice.
Yeah. But it's not a great space, and I think that though our Kathleen and I talked a lot about like showing the queer side of this, like our performance, I hope, speaks to the fact that like this is a problem for everyone. Like, this isn't just a problem for queer students or trans students or whatever. Like, this is a problem for even the most privileged students who walk around on this campus, because this perpetuation of this like toxic masculinity and this like expectation of femininity is really troublesome for so many students. And I know that all of us in the group I had personal interviews with some students. I know that I've talked to a lot of students off the cuff about this, and it's something that it's felt like you can't talk about in a lot of ways, which is why we wanted to end with a discussion, because you're not supposed to talk about the problems with the coordinate system, because I made a jab at this in my monologue, but this idea of tradition and this idea of what the colleges are supposed to stand for, but that very like existence is what is making it so uncomfortable for so many students on this campus.
And to go for what Kelsey said, like, if you go around and ask like 100 students what the coordinate system is, a lot of those students are not going to know.
Yep. I was talking, sorry to cut you off, Nick, but I was inviting someone to the performance today, and they were like, oh, what's it about? And I was like, the coordinate system. And they were like, oh, is that like an astrological thing? Or like, are you talking about latitude and longitude? And I was like, what? And they were like, what is it about? And I was like, the coordinate system. And they were like, yeah. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, it was like right before this performance.
Yeah, like, and if I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know what it was until I took this course. So
I'm the same way with him.
Yeah. The other thing, going back to the resource center, is like it's completely inconvenient to like. You wouldn't normally go up there. Like, I don't think I've ever been up in that space except to like pick somebody up to go grocery shopping, like, quite honestly.
Direct call out.
It's the only reason I've been up there, yeah. I mean, but really, like, I've never gone up there. It's just very out of the way, and it's not central to campus. And if you wanted to make it an accessible space for people, I feel like it should be in a building that a lot of people go to, where it wouldn't be out of the ordinary to see someone there, you know? hard to see someone who doesn't usually go there to be there.
I think that also goes out to like the false advertisement that we mentioned, because like we have a resource center, but as Kels and Kathleen were saying, like a lot of queer people, students don't feel comfortable being in that space. So like there's no point in having it there if it's not going to help the queer students.
Well, because when you think of it, right, a resource center should be somewhere that you should go when you don't know what you're dealing with. And the only students that feel comfortable going there are the students that are like, I'm gay, I'm here, let's do it. Like it just, and maybe I'm speaking too personally from my experience, but I cannot imagine a single person on this campus who is in the closet feeling comfortable going into a glass box that has the words LGBTQ+, everyone's gay, rainbows are everywhere. And that just further leads to a suppression of your identity because you don't feel comfortable going to the one space you're supposed to feel comfortable going to. And it's just like the tokenization of literally putting us in glass.
Yeah. And I I, as like someone who is one of those out and loud people, I have no problem talking about how fucking queer I am. I hate being there. It is the most uncomfortable experience. The first time I went, it's out of the way. I had no idea where I was going on this campus. I didn't know any upperclassmen who could show me where it was. And I walked in and I was like, immediately no. Because it doesn't feel like a safe space, even when you are out, even when you are the biggest whatever on this campus, it's not, it's not like a space. sorry.
We've talked a lot about being gay throughout
yeah. But, I feel like in general, like that space is a really good representation, but in general on this campus, like there isn't spaces where people can feel comfortable in themselves. And I think a lot of this, again, and we've talked about this a lot in our group, which is why we wanted to like make this performance. We touched on a lot with our performance, with our monologues, and with our like in-between dialogue, is that it touches everything. The coordinate system, there's not a place on this campus that it does not impact your experience. Whether or not you realize it or not is another thing entirely. But it impacts your experience, it impacts your day-to-day, it impacts what your 4 years are going to be like, and it impacts to the point of your graduation and where you're graduating from. Yeah, sorry, we've been talking too much. Do any of you have other comments?
It goes beyond that though, Kels, you know, like
Yeah.
even after you graduate, like it's always with you. Like my degree will always say William Smith College, you know, like unless I graduate with the Master of Arts in Teaching program, like I don't, it's a possibility, who knows what's going on, but like, you know.
Yeah, like when I was applying to, I didn't even realize, like coming in, until recently I didn't realize that coordinate system was an actual thing. I thought it was just like, oh, William Smith College, I thought it was just a name and like you all, like, you know, all go to classes together, you know, like live in the same place. It's just kind of, it was just kind of a, you know, cool sounding name. I thought it was just the same graduation. Then, you know, with like the, you know, orientation, it's like, oh wait, why are they going that way? Oh wait, it's a different thing entirely, but same classes, same living spaces, different diplomas, different results. How the hell does that make sense? I think one step in kind of going to solve this problem, if the kind of advertisement of the coordinate station is made more clear and kind of people know what they're getting themselves into, then there will be more discussion there. And the discussion will lead down to the realizing, wait, this is kind of effed up, maybe we should change this, definitely change this, let's change it. It just needs to, people need to be aware of it, and there needs to it needs to be clear in the admissions office and everything that this is what you're getting yourself into, be sure you know it before you sign the thing to get the damn work.
Yeah, no, I specifically did research with admissions, I interviewed people in admissions, and I can say that experience of not realizing what you're getting into is really common. Admissions admitted that to me and said that people don't ask about it, they don't really advertise it that heavily, besides like the most basic thing ever. And people come to this campus and are entirely confused when they step into orientation and there are those two separate tents and two separate lines. So your experience isn't unique, like a lot of people experience that coming here. Your application is to both. Your literal application is to both colleges. They don't separate you until after you're accepted.
Oh, I was just saying, it's true.
I do just want to say it is 5:30, which was when we officially said that this was going to be over. So if you need to step out, feel free to step out whenever. But we're happy to stay and chat as long as you guys want.
We can talk about this all day.
Yeah, honestly, we have talked about it all day many times.
Yes, thank you for coming.
So this is my 9th year teaching at the colleges, and I hear this conversation every year. I haven't seen an awesome performance like this about it, so that's new and encouraging to me. That feels like awesome progress, so it'll make me feel really hopeful about it. But one thing that's been confusing to me, like the faculty, we just teach everybody and we're, one thing. I've just been confused about why students don't get worked up about this more, right? Why I hear the same conversation from a decent chunk of students every year for 9 years in a row, in different spaces, different times, but it never feels like there's a student movement to just do something about it, like actually go lie down in front of someone's office or like, and I'm kind of curious, like faculty can do stuff, but I think it's going to take the administration or board of trustees feeling like enough students want to change. So I'm kind of curious why you think that that's not a big thing.
Yeah. Personally, I feel like it's because we do get a lot of misinformation and not a lot of people know about it because it's not widely advertised. Like Cam was saying, because when I first went on a tour here, it wasn't apparent to me that it was going to be so divisive, And I think that because all the information is so mixed and a lot of people are afraid of being wrong or a lot of people are even afraid of being heard, that not a lot of people speak up as much as they could be about it.
No, you go first.
Yeah, like Ren just said, I don't think they advertise it as much as they should. And not only that, but like the coordinate system doesn't affect males as much as it does, females and binary gender students and queer students, because it's like we get a lot of funding. Hobart gets a lot of funding compared to William Smith, and then like William Smith has to spend the equal amount that Hobart has to spend. So it's like it's just a lot of issues with it, and that's why I think like not a lot of students are making a movement for it, because like a lot of like dudes do not care about it because it's not really affecting them.
Would it affect them the other way?
I think it benefits
Are there
them,
males
absolutely.
who would
Yeah.
prefer it the way it is?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure.
So that may be why the admissions continues to
Yeah.
play this game with you?
Yeah.
I actually went to a resume writing seminar, and I guess it was a requirement that because of a certain fraternity's social probation or something, they had to go to the same seminar. And I heard a lot of comments from them about the fact that they don't want the William Smith name tainting their resume for when they go out.
Love those.
Even though it's a male name?
Yeah. They,
Wow! 13 days, boys, let's go.
They're like, I want to get a job, so I'm not going to put that on my
Do you know what
resume.
frat that was out there?
I'm being so serious.
One of the only frats to have their whole fraternity put on social probation.
That happens all the time.
And for a problem associated with like LGBTQ plus rights. Did you hear about the fraternity that got
No,
put
I
on social probation because they
I
kicked out
did
of
hear
a
about that.
Do you know which one it was?
PSK?
Yeah.
Of course. Nice.
Yeah.
I also heard about the frat that sent like a bunch of their pledges to the vagina monologues as like hazing.
No, it's jokes, yeah. A lot of some of my friends that were pledging there had to go to that, and
Yeah.
they were forced to like
And I
make
was
comments
pretty
that-
mad about it because they were like, this is like a man-hating space now. I literally got up and was like, just to clear all of the rumors, this is not a female-only event. Everyone is welcome. We do not hate men.
I think, and that
kind of
especially like, sorry, Jed.
No.
It's kind of like historically, public perception, public opinion is really when things change. You look at Gandhi's protests, the civil rights movement. Everything changes when like public opinion changes. If not a lot of people are hearing about these things, like I had no idea about either frat things. Like these things need to be clear. People need to be more clear and kind of. This information needs to get out, there needs to be conversation, and people need to start thinking more and realizing, okay, shit, maybe this isn't the 1950s anymore. And then, once the student body is, working together and in agreement that things need to change, then, the, trustees, administration will be like, okay, maybe if everyone is against this and everyone hates it, maybe it's time to change it. But that needs to be more clear, and people need to really band together and come to agreement on that.
Which is why the point of our performance was to end in a discussion and to hopefully continue these discussions. Because I agree with you entirely that like there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of people that just don't think about it. And like I can say that there's tons of stuff that I learned about this that like as coming in as someone who didn't like the coordinate system. Like after I didn't know about it. After I got here and experienced like the first 3 days I was like, wow. But as someone who came into this, as someone who came into this project already like disliking it from a base standpoint, I learned a lot more that made me realize that like it's a problem all over the board. So I think having those discussions and communicating that information is really important, which is what our first step was with this performance. And I hope that when you all walk away, you've taken, if you didn't know things before that we've mentioned throughout our monologues or throughout our dialogue, that you take away some of that and hopefully share it with the other people you know on this campus and share it widely in order to get these conversations generated.
Yeah. And I also do think, I'm not going to be like, I'm not trying to kiss up here, but like our class, Karen is my professor in our philosophy and feminism class, and I think a lot of meaningful conversation has actually come from like the dialogues that we've had like in class environments that are dedicated to discussing issues like that. And I think that that's what the goal system is supposed to try and get at, but a lot of people don't really take the goals or like a lot of class information seriously, which I think is harmful, but I think that it's a step in the right direction to offer classes to everyone and to speak to everyone about issues like this.
I think to go back to your point about this coming up every year in the 9 years that you've been here, this so goes against everything that I learned in this class, and I'm sorry that I'm about to say this, H, but as someone who like genuinely believes in change, I really do. I genuinely believe that if enough people work towards something, like you can change something. I honestly do not see it happening at this campus. Like I don't see it happening here. And I think that's because like as someone who works with alums constantly and as someone who is in the advancement office twice a week and who works with admissions all the time, I just don't see the administration ever listening because like there are so many people that love it so much. And there are so many people that are even still students now that love it so much. I mean, my relationship with the coordinate system changed, which I said in my monologue. When I came in here, I was a stan for the coordinate system. Like, I was here for it. And now I'm like, why? Like, because at the time I was like, wow, women get all these things, and like, we have our own leadership opportunities, and oh my God, I'm a William Smith woman, and like, oh my, I was so here for it. And like throughout my 4 years here, I kind of came to the realization like how messed up it is that we feel that we need to completely separate and segregate our institutions to give women autonomy. Like that is ridiculous if you think about it on paper, but like it just, there are so many, particularly William Smith alums, that like if there were to be any change, all of that funding, all of those donations would cease immediately. And money is a lot more important than reputation at this school. If you are sending in checks, they will put your name on it, you know? So I don't see it happening, which is really upsetting, but I don't.
But if it doesn't happen, I think it's important that we continue to have these conversations and take what we learned from this campus, which really is a microcosm in a lot of ways of what we're going to experience once we leave these walls, for students at least. Obviously, professors, I guess you're kind of stuck here. But once like students leave, to take these lessons and to be a lot more, I mean, in social change, with H, I think what I've taken away as a big thing is that the first step to any change, and to anything, is awareness. So to be aware and to walk out of the institution aware of the problems that are here and the problems that are going to mirror themselves when you go and get your job or do whatever you're going to do after you graduate, I think is very crucial. So if we take Kathleen's view, which I think is pretty valid in a lot of ways, I hope that no one walks out of here after hearing that comment and thinks, well, what's the point? The point is education, the point is awareness, and the point is taking the lessons you learned from here and applying them to things that you can put your effort towards changing. And I still think there's a lot of ways that we can change the system incremental to make it more inclusive and to make it better, but
Yeah, the other thing is, Kathleen, you know how much I love you, but your opinion does not mean you're right.
You're right.
And I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind too, because a lot of people will hear one person's comment and use that as an excuse to not do anything, or to be lazy, or to not care, like Kels was saying. And I think that that's what a lot of people have been doing. Like they've seen all these things happen and they're like, oh, it doesn't really matter. Like nothing's gonna change anyway. Because I know people who have said that to me because they think that it's too difficult or that it's not feasible or that it would never happen. And so they're like, oh, well, I don't really like the coordinate system, but it's never gonna change. So that's it. That's a lot of comments.
Yeah, going off what Kelsey mentioned earlier, like raising awareness is very, very important. Like before this project, like I never knew that like it was harder for women to get into this institution than it is for men. And like knowing that now, like that makes me like really mad, like that barrier between the two like schools. And by like raising awareness, I feel like we can like influence more people and like getting the word out and like trying to solve this issue.
Yeah, and we included a couple lines in there referring to that. Like me and them had the same GPA in high school, and I got in like not as soon as I applied, but like I never got waitlisted. Like they never made me wait, and she got waitlisted twice, which like just goes to show how like how effective the coordinate system is in a negative way. And another comment, like to go off of what Kelsey and Kathleen were saying. Even if they don't dismantle the coordinate system completely, I think that there's a lot of room to modernize it and to make it beneficial for both women and men and non-binary, gender people. So.
Yeah, I think that throughout the research, I've heard, at least from the administration and faculty that I've talked to, this idea of modernization. But if we're going to talk, then we got to walk the walk as well and do something.
Walk it like I'm talking.